It's the top 4 tanking specs for Warmanes. Red of the Lich King 3.3.5. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are having yourselves a fine day. Now, we have previously covered the top 5 best DPS classes, and now we'll look at the best tanking specs for 3.3.5 WoTLK, more specifically on Warmane. Before we get into the brunt of the information, a nice little disclaimer. This is merely my opinion, which is based upon 10 plus years of experience. Most of that time was spent in Wrath of the Lich King. That doesn't mean that my opinion is set in stone or that my word is law. It doesn't even mean that I cannot change my opinion if I am schooled by somebody. My motto is that confidence is great, but arrogance leads to being a malaka. And I usually do this at the end, but allow me to thank you for all the support to my channel. It literally fills me with hopes and dreams that we've recently hit 600 subscribers, so thank you again, and let's hit that 700 subscribers. I typed in the early draft of this script. And here we are at nearly 800 subscribers. Wait, I gotta update that again. We've hit 800 subscribers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Now, since there weren't many tanks to choose from, I had to include all of them. You might think I am leaving out Frost and Unholy Death Knight, but that's for the same reason that I don't bring up a Beastmaster Hunter when we're talking about DPS specs. Sure, it works, and that's where it ends. Frost and Unholy Death Knights provide buffs that can be either provided by the Blood Death Knight in regards to the 10% attack power from Abdominal Rage, or the 20% attack speed from Icy Talons. And the 13% magical damage increase from Ebon Plaguebringer can be nice, especially because it is area of effect, but the Boomkin already applies this debuff on single target. The only place where an Unholy Death Knight could be nice is Ruby Sanctum 25 Heroic or Onyxia, specifically for their respective add phases. But you wouldn't want to really use an Unholy Death Knight tank in Ruby Sanctum 25 Heroic anyway, because you can take a Protection Warrior. Now the question becomes, why take a Protection Warrior? I will tell you why. Number 4. Protection Warrior. Protection Warriors, spoilers, they don't have a lot going for them in this expansion, unlike on Classic where they are undoubtedly the gods of tanking. In Wrath of the Lich King, however, they seem to lack the safety that the other tanking specs have. More on that safety a little later. Protection Warriors have a fine stat line which consists of the hit rating and expertise cap, around 40k armor and tons of stamina. They are going to need this because they seemingly get hit a lot harder than other classes. Even the best warrior tanks that I've seen over the years on Warmane and Molten don't usually hold up too well on high damage fights such as the Lich King, Helion or even Vestergot's 3rd stack phase. Warrior tanks have few but strong cooldowns. These are Last Stand, a powerful cooldown that does have a glyph associated to it. The glyph will lower its cooldown by an entire minute. I am not necessarily a professional at warrior tanking, but I assume this can be very valuable on the harder encounters where you inevitably have to pop cooldowns because of something like the Lich King Soul Reaper or Helion putting a nasty consumption or combustion on the respective realm's tank healer. Last Stand can be combined with other health increasing cooldowns such as the Battlemaster's effects. This is one of the warrior's flagship cooldowns. Besides Last Stand, they can use Shield Wall, another really strong cooldown with another really long cooldown. However, there is Glyph of Shield Wall, which would reduce its cooldown but also the amount of damage reduction that it would provide, a real double-edged sword. Enraged Regeneration can also be glyphed, but I would not suggest it. I would rather take the Taunt Glyph. Like I mentioned earlier, the healing can also be increased by maximum HP though. Stacking cooldowns will make you one hella scary tank. A few smaller cooldowns include Shield Block, it maximizes your block chance. This is incredibly powerful on smaller mobs, such as the Add Wave in Ruby Sanctum 25 Heroic. Combined with Damage Shield, you are going to be doing lots of damage. Just be sure not to pop it while the adds are still stunned from your shockwave. And finally we have the tier 10 4-set bonus. This turns your Blood Rage into an Absorb, absorbing 20% of your maximum health. Needless to say, this can become quite a large number combined with Last Stand and with other health buffs up. Seemingly they have enough cooldowns, not compared to Death Knights, but we'll get to that. The real problem with protection warriors in my opinion is their lack of utility. Sure, you can do threat reduction with intervene granted that you are the off tank or that the boss is occupied. You can reduce the damage one person takes by 3% and transfer 10% of their threat onto you. The second part is important here because the first part can be overwritten easily by Discipline Priest Renewed Hope or the Protection Paladin's Blessing of Sanctuary. However, the threat transfer is very nice to have even if it is only on one person. Piercing Howl offers an area of effect shout that dazes all enemies within 10 yards of you, slowing their movement speed by 50%. This is incredibly powerful and even Fury Warriors shoots back into this to slow down the Valkyrs on the Lich King encounter amongst other things. Thunder Armor, which every melee class will appreciate you for, and Demoralizing Shout, an area of effect attack power reduction similar to the Paladin's Vindication and the Druid's Demoralizing Roar. As for taunts, you've got potentially unlimited amounts of taunts given Vigilance is being used for this purpose. Otherwise you will have your regular taunt with an 8-second cooldown, Mocking Blow and an area of effect taunt. Like I said, this is not a lot of utility compared to the other tanks. It is more than a Death Knight, but they are for sure not as tanky as a Death Knight. Their aggro is not that great either. You'll need a proper main tanking build for endgame PvE threat holding, and part of their aggro is also RNG, which is shield slam procs from Sword and Board. Going for the main tanking build means you can't have Piercing Howl and the upgraded Demoralizing Shout though. The thing protection warriors do have going for them though is definitely the mobility. Unquestionably the most mobile tank in the game thanks to the Warbringer talent. This allows you to cast Charge in combat and in any stance. The same goes with Intercept, allowing you to have 2 offensive charges and 1 defensive charge with Intervene. Decent cooldowns, average threat and marvelous mobility, the Protection Warrior sadly ends up at place number 4, perhaps the most predictable pick in this entire list. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no he didn't, never played this class endgame so I just don't know, sorry. Oh no he didn't, I'm sure payback is a coming, I will read your comments forever. Oh no well I guess that's okay. I haven't played Death Knight much myself, but allow me to say that I would let an equally skilled Death Knight main tank over me on anything else than a Feral Druid any day. They are really good tanks. Let's start off with the cooldowns. IBF or Icebound Fortitude is one of the most commonly known defensives in the game. It prevents stuns in PvP and it also prevents death in PvE. It reduces all damage taken by 30% plus a little bit more based on your defense stat. There is also a glyph for it and I have done my darned best to figure out what the best thing to do with IBF is, and honestly, after a lot of research I'm just not quite sure. And I am sure that there is a 0.1% of the elite of all of Warmanes Death Knights out there that knows his facts, so if you do, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Besides IBF, there is Army of the Dead. While channeling this, you are unable to dodge or parry, but you will take less damage equal to your parry and dodge rating, which is probably around 40 or 50% even inside of ICC, so that is not half bad. Our final damage reduction talent is our tier 10 4-set bonus. It gives 12% damage reduction upon using Blood Tap, similar to the Warrior's 4-set bonus. That is all the Death Knight straight up damage reduction abilities, but don't you worry, we have a few more cooldowns to go. Hold on to your health bars because Death Knights are known for their self-healing. And well, I'll be damned, it might be better than a Protection Paladin Seal of Light plus Judgment of Light combination. We'll start off with Vampiric Blood. It is used to improve your maximum health by 15% and increase all healing generated by you by 35%. You can and should combine this effect with your lesser healing cooldowns, which are Rune Tap, although I wouldn't advise glyphing this, Death Strike, which can be considered like as a mini cooldown, especially if you have 2 or 3 of them ready, and Vampiric Blood Up. Mark of Blood, which can be used to give your raid group a burst of healing, or if you use it at the right moment when the tank damage happens, gives you a burst of healing. Finally we have Anti-Magic Channel. Oh, I meant shield, anti-magic shield. I'm sure that you all know the magical damage absorption part. What you might not know if you are just a PvEer is that it also prevents harmful effects from landing on you. That final part is especially great. It allows you to absorb harmful effects such as the Big Spider's area of effect health drain before Lady Deathwhisper, the Rune of Blood on Deathbringer Sourfang, and the Blood Queen Lanatel's Fear. And just so many more things. You could even use it on Helion's Combustion or Consumption, but you'll have to have applied AMS before the spell happens, and I've personally never done it. But I've seen a Combustion or Consumption timer magically missing completely, so that leads me to believe that it either got a anti-magic channeled or maybe even spell reflected, who knows. We've just covered the plethora of cooldowns that a Death Knight has, and oh boy were it many. You can do several cool combinations like this: IBF plus AMS plus Syndra Trinket plus Blood Tap plus Vampiric Blood plus Rune Tap plus Army of the Dead. Yeah, I kinda panicked. Now that we've checked the cooldowns, let's talk about one of the Death Knight's lesser fronts, the utility. The most useless tank in this apartment and therefore not my favorite tank. All of the buffs a Blood Death Knight tank can give can be covered by several other classes, with the only exception being Hysteria. The 10% attack power buff can be and probably will be covered by a Marksman Hunter in a 25-man raid. The 20% melee haste is often the only unique buff a Blood Death Knight brings to the raid, and that is only the case if there's no Frost Death Knight. In a 10-man raiding situation you might end up not having that Marksman Hunter there though, so there it could be useful. Horn of Winter can be covered by any other Death Knight spec and the Shaman's Strength of the Earth Totem. If there is an enhancement Shaman that is specced into this, as he or she should be, your horn will simply be overwritten. As for taunts, they have one regular 8-second cooldown taunt called Dark Command and a very unique taunt that we all hate from PvP, Death Grip. Death Grip allows you to reposition non-boss mobs almost instantaneously. This is particularly useful on the Shambling Horror in the Lich King encounter or any enemy at the VDW encounter. Lastly, they have a 20% attack speed slow on their Frost Fever debuff. Usually another class provides this debuff, but you'll miss it when you don't have it. Like I said, not much to speak of when we are talking about utility in Death Knights. The Death Grip is definitely something though, but they'll make up for it in threat. Speaking of, Death Knights have a really easy time with threat. A few icy touches at the start of a fight will grant you enough threat for the coming 10 or so seconds, even in endgame guilds. You could go hard with double icy touch, blood tap, icy touch and power rune weapon, and then redo the initial icy touch spam. In all honesty, when else are you going to use Empower Rune Weapon? If you don't have a plan A for a cooldown, just keep throwing it in there somewhere until it makes sense. Their mobility is rather lacking on boss enemies because these cannot be slowed. If a mob can be slowed, however, you can expect a good Death Knight to be able to guide it forever with Chains of Ice. So as I've said, I have never played a Death Knight tank in an endgame situation. I do respect the power that that class holds, and regardless of who lands on the number 1 and 2 slot, a good Death Knight tank will always be allowed to main tank in my raids. Unless there is an equally skilled Feral Druid. About that. Numero 2. Feral Dos. There is a reason why Feral Druids are called HP bags. I mean, look at that health. The thing is though that before the ICC patch came, they focused largely on avoidance, dodge more specifically. But because of ICC's 20% dodge rating debuff and Helion's Twilight Precision, which is similar to the ICC debuff, avoidance became a little bit less reliable. The answer our healthy Roaring Potatoes gave? Okay. We'll just get hit. Easily boosting 80k HP inside of Ice Cream Citadel, preferably a permanent armor cap as opposed to the off-tank classes who can simply pop a potion of armor when it is their turn to tank. Feral Druids are my all-time favorite main tank in 3.3.5 Wrath of the Lich King. Even the argument that Hysteria would give a single target more burst can be disregarded because of the Feral Druid's DPS, especially with some DPS trinkets and or some gear on. Feral Druids have an alright amount of cooldowns, nothing as crazy as the Death Knights, but it is still a lot more than a Paladin. Survival Instincts works just like the Warrior's Last Stand. However, the Druid's health pool is much larger, so it will increase it substantially, easily to 120k. What is your highest HP ever on a Feral tank? Let me know in the comments below. Oh, and on a side note, Feral Instincts, be careful when you use this with Infest, because Yeah, if you don't have a Resto Shaman or H-Pala, you're gonna end up dead. The next cooldown our fleshy punching bags have is Bark Skin. For a low 1 minute cooldown, it provides you with a 20% damage reduction. You can combine this with the tier 10 4-set bonus to get a 32 damage percent reduction in total. My Feral Druid advisor called it, it's decent, yeah. Frenzied Regeneration with Glyph, which you should have along with the Glyph of Survival Instincts and Glyph of Growl. Combining Frenzied Regeneration with a small external cooldown or with Survival Instincts will make you absolutely unkillable, provided that there is a Holy Paladin or a Resto Shaman that is healing your Bopreganius amount of health. Now, a quick peek at their utility. Considering a Druid is a Druid, there is plenty of utility to go around. As usual, let's start off with the combat res everyone knows and loves this spell. I shouldn't have to explain much about it. You make mistake, you die, you undie, you make another mistake, people call you noob. Everyone knows how it goes. It can be tricky to use it as the main tank and communication is often required. The same goes for Innervate, especially in the longer fights you are going to have to find your moments to use this. While in their trusty bear form they can still apply Demoralizing Roar, the Druid version of the attack power debuff. However, I haven't pointed out yet that warriors and druids can put up to 5 talent points into their respective attack power debuff boosting talents. Doing this will make it stronger than a paladin's Vindication. They can alternatively spec into Infected Wounds. I prefer taking at least 1 point in this, so my base movement speed is higher than the enemies at that point. Druid tanks do have one glaring weakness though. Their aggro and pull is quite miserable, especially if rage starved for any of many reasons. They have the least amount of taunts out of all of the tanks, only one 8-second cooldown and an area of effect taunt that works just as well on a single target. If the fight won't need an area of effect taunt, it is a nice backup taunt. You can and should even glyph Challenging Roar, so it has a little bit of a lower cooldown. One of the best minor glyphs in the game though. Luckily, threat in endgame can be partially, if not mostly fixed with proper misdirections, tricks of the trades and aggro reducing abilities such as Hand of Salvation and Intervene. Using a combination of these threat manipulating abilities will allow the druids to stack their Lacerate, which at 5 stacks will grant them all the aggro they need. Another way to make a good threat is to use Berserk and spam Mangles, and if you are doing a raid such as Naxxramas with a best in slot Feral Druid tank, you might even equip some DPS trinkets, preferably of the armor penetration variation, because all of that yummy physical damage, and dear lord, can they do a lot of damage. For mobility they have charge and potentially a cat dash, as long as you can shapeshift while you're not getting attacked by a boss. If you do get the chance to shapeshift, you can outrun most targets with Feral Swiftness. It's like a paladin's Pursuit of Justice on steroids. I did have to use footage from another player for the same reason that I did with Death Knights. I don't currently have a Feral Druid tank. The one I was using is long gone. I did play it enough to understand the simplicity of it though. It's very simple to play, it's very fun to play, it's very good to have in your raid. You cannot go wrong with a Feral Druid tank. Number 1. Protection Paladin. Yup, my main is a Protection Paladin. Yup, I am biased. Yup, this is my list. Allow me to start off by saying that even though Paladins can main tank quite easily, they really excel in the off-tanking role, boasting all of the Paladin's regular utilities such as Hand of Sacrifice, Salvation, Protection and Freedom, all of the auras, CC in Holy Wrath which is glyphable, Hammer of Justice which you shoot talent into, Turn Evil, Judgment of Justice, Seal of Justice, Avenging Shield. The best taunts of any class, 2 8-second cooldown taunts that are both unique. One deals holy damage which scales with Righteous Fury, and the other one takes up to 3 enemies from your taunt target. They can be used in perfect succession for 12 seconds of cheesy taunts. The cooldowns are the only real and quite a big issue for a paladin tank. Only having Divine Protection at first glance, it is a strong defensive ability with a moderate 2-minute cooldown. There is however another ability which situationally can be used just for yourself. Macroing Divine Sacrifice in a macro like this. You can press it twice, once to activate it and the second time to remove the damage transfer roll. If you have your talent tree set up properly, you will keep the damage reduction. And there is one more cooldown. Maybe every single officer I've ever met has hated me for using Ardent Defender as a cooldown. Understandably, but questionable for sure. If you do get one shot, it tends to be a very short time span. 1 or 2 seconds. Usually this only happens once. Imagine Sindragosa's Frostbreath with some Mystic Buffet stacks, or even Lich King's Soul Reaper. When this one shot occurs, there will be some small downtime after that in which the healers can heal you up. It may be risky, but to be honest, usually it just gets procced when it is too late for it to matter, and at that point it's not doing much either. I think what the officers and most people honestly would rather hear is that you just get an external cooldown such as Pain Suppression or a Hand of Sacrifice if you want to eat some Soul Reapers on the Lich King. As for mobility, they do have a constant 15% movement speed increase with Pursuit of Justice. Combined with Judgment of Justice, you'll find that you are always outrunning at least one enemy, if Judgment of Justice is applied. Since this isn't that much mobility, I do like carrying around some swiftness potions on me, alongside with nitro boosts of course. Frankly, that applies to all of the tank classes, being able to outrun the Lich King if he enrages, or if you need to maneuver quickly in a tight spot. Imagine being the third tank in Ruby Sanctum 25 Heroic. If you have nitro boosts, you can still stay and deliver a proper shockwave before speeding away. Aggro shouldn't be much of an issue for Protection Paladin either. If it is, you can try using some different talent trees. Points such as Crusade or Seals of the Pure will undoubtedly increase your threat per second. So to sum it up, Protection Warrior is usable, especially if spec'd correctly. You will however have to keep using Tricks of the Trade for aggro, Hand of Salvations, etc. And in my opinion, this is wasteful to the raid's DPS, because people are gonna end up using global cooldowns for these things. And if there are other, better alternatives, why? Death Knight is the tank I have the least experience with. That being said, I would never underestimate the tankiness of one, and I'd only ever let a Feral Druid main tank over them, and that would only be because they use Rage as a resource. Solid tanks, amazing aggro, lackluster utility, but overall Death Knight is a very worthy tank. Feral Druids are just sacks of health really. The Lich King could take them into a Rocky montage and the Druid would probably still survive. They have to rely more on the healers than a Death Knight and they might need an extra misdirect. Even with that in mind, I would still let them main tank over a Death Knight. Paladins in an expansion where you constantly fight the undead. It goes without saying that the undead slayers would be favored. When you consider all of their passive buffs, active buffs, debuffs, stuns, I don't have a doubt in my mind that you absolutely want at least one Protection Paladin in your 25 raid. Especially if you either don't have a Holy Paladin or if the Holy Paladin is not running a Divine Sacrifice spec. In fact, I was out picking some fresh memes and I ran upon this Warmane poll. And in the poll, a lot of people seem to agree with me, maybe not about the other classes, but at least that Protection Paladin is numero uno. Now, before I let you guys go, let me thank you one more time, alright? And just so you guys understand why I'm so thankful, take a look at this shit. We have doubled our subscribers in like the last 28 days, alright? Like, watch time is 8.2k more than usual. All this viewer bullshit, 50k views more than usual. That's all because of you guys, so yeah. Keep being awesome, and I'll keep being myself. Thank you guys so much. So that was it for this list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Thank you for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing, and tuning into my streams. Remember that you make all of this possible. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. I'll be out.